Good morning. My name is Scott Warner. I'm president of the Culinary Historians of Chicago, and we are meeting earlier, and we're meeting on a Saturday morning. We usually don't do that, but we did that because we have a special guest who is live from Rome today, Valentina Masotti, and it's 5 p.m. in Rome time right now. So we're accommodating Valentina for this, happily accommodating her to do this program. I'm going to first tell you about our upcoming program for July 12th, Wednesday evening, July 12th. We have scheduled Alex Prudhomme. You might not recognize the name, but you know who he is. He is one of Julia Child's nephews. He co-authored the book with her about my life in France that became part of the movie, Julie and Julia. And so Meryl Streep starred in that movie about his Aunt Julia Child, based on Alex's writing with Julia Child. But he's not going to be talking about Julia Child. He's going to be talking about his latest book, Dinner with the President. And he writes about the presidents and their dining in the White House and how this impacted America's history and America's culinary history. But that's on Wednesday evening, July 12th at 7 p.m. And we'll be sending you information about that shortly. So watch your emails and check our website. And if you haven't signed up to receive our emails, please do so on the website. It's right at the very top of the website in the first paragraph. So anyway, I am going to not really introduce our speaker today. I'm going to have a distinguished upcoming speaker introduce her. Her name is Viola Buitoni. And if you recognize the name Buitoni, that's because it's the pasta. She's a royal member of the world's culinary family, because that's her family, Buitoni pasta. Viola is coming to us from her home in, is it San Francisco, Viola? You can just shake your head.
Yes, it's San Francisco.
San Francisco. Viola's responsible for us having Valentina today. I met Viola in Pittsburgh last year at the International Association of Culinary Professionals conference. And Viola, I asked her to be a speaker. She sounded so fascinating. And then she recommended Valentina. So Viola, first, could you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be speaking about on October 4th? And tell us a little bit about yourself. And then you're going to introduce Valentina, who you think is the rice queen in Italy. So you take the show away. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, my name is Viola Buitoni. Good morning to all. If I look not my best, it's because I woke up at 7 to join this. This is how much I think of Valentina. She is incredible. I will be speaking on October 4th about my upcoming book. I've written a book called Italy by Ingredient, which focuses on 12 of the cornerstones of the Italian pantry and contextualizes them historically, personally, culinarily, and then goes on with some very contemporary recipes that are both from my collections, my family collections, and my life in San Francisco. And Scott has done me the honor of asking me to be a feature speaker and talk about my book and my experience and my life in food, which is between my personal family experience and and my professional experience. I'm kind of almost amazed to say, but almost 60 years old. So I look forward to October 4th. And in the meantime, let's talk about Valentina. I found Valentina when I was writing my book, because one of the chapters is actually dedicated to rice, which is a pretty mainstay in Italian cooking. And in many ways, not just in the way that we think of it for the most part, which is risotto. So when I was doing some research and talking to some people whom I knew, all rice roads kept leading back to Valentina. So finally I said, all right, it seems like I have to meet this Valentina. And I reached out to her and she answered almost immediately. And we had a wonderful talk in which I realized the breadth and depth of her knowledge. Valentina is a rice sommelier, which is a rather new qualification in Italy. I actually think she is the first one to have that qualification in Italy. And she is one of the first, and she also certifies other people as rice sommelier. She's part of an organization called Acqua Verde Riso, and it is a non-profit that deals with the reality of rice in Italy, but also in the rest of Europe, with both education and making sure that heirloom quality, heirloom rice is preserved, that the environment is preserved, that things are done around rice the way that they should be. And more than everything is making sure that the rest of the world is aware of just how amazing Italy and Italian rice are. If you are inclined to do so, she has actually a sommelier course online. I know that a couple of people in this audience have signed up for it because they've told me. And she also does risotto classes. Today she will do a demo, but in her classes she gets much more into depth as to what the techniques of risotto are and can be. As she and I talked, there are so many different ways for doing risotto. It's just not a static one. So I am incredibly excited to hear her speak for the next hour or so, and also watch how she makes a risotto for us all. So welcome, Valentina, and please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Viola. It's a big honor for me to be here with you, with Scott, with the Culinary Historians of Chicago people. And you told everything about me and about rice and sommelier. So if it's okay for you, I can share my screen. And so today I will talk about Italian rice and risotto. And as Viola told before, I am a rice sommelier, and so I discovered this world a few years ago because I was born in Vercelli. I live in a town in the main town of the rice in Italy, and we apply sensory analysis to the different kinds of rices that we cultivate in Italy, and that I'm going to show you today. I am also a communication and a consultant for the agri-food sector with a focus on the rice. And as Scott told you, I have a website to promote my courses, my classes, my rice and risotto classes. And if you want, you can also find all my contacts. Okay. So I usually start all my classes with this picture because and with this sentence, rice, it all looks the same. So it's clearly a joke because you can see in this image that we have very different kinds of rices depending on the shape, on the size, on the colors, and all these rices could be used for recipes, for different kinds of recipes. And I tried to promote different varieties fit for different recipes. Just an overview about the rice cultivation in Italy. In Italy, we cultivate about 50% of European rice. So it's a very important country, not only for the cultivation, but also because we have an hybridization activity. So we create new rice varieties that will be cultivated in all of Europe. The 94% of the cultivation is concentrated here in the northwest of Italy, and I live here in this part of Italy. Here there is a town between Turin and Milano that is called Vercelli, and is the capital, Italian capital of the rice. In the northwest, there is the most concentration of rice cultivation, but we also have some cultivations of rice near Verona, in the northeast of Italy, where we cultivate the Alone Nano, and also here near Bologna, between Rovigo and Ferrara. There is a little bit cultivation in Tuscany, in Sardinia, in Sicily, in Calabria, and from the last years, also near Naples in Salerno. Imagine that in Italy, we have 250 kinds of rices, and we cultivate about 70 rices. Most of the people know very few rices in Italy. And so today we are going to discover the most known also by Italian people. Before we go on, I would like to tell you something about the story of the rice cultivation in Italy, because we started to cultivate rice in the Middle Age, but before it was taken in Italy through the Arabs. They arrived at first in the 9th century in Sicily, and they introduced rice. Some rice arrived through Turkey, coming from Greece and then arriving in the northeast of Italy, and then through the Africa, Spain, and France in the northwest. Spain is the second country for the rice cultivation in Europe, and France cultivates a little bit of rice here in the south of the country, and it's called the Camargue, rice of Camargue. So the rice was introduced from Spain and from France in the northwest of Italy, coming from with the help of the Arabs. Here, near Vercelli, is one of the first places where the rice was cultivated in the Middle Age in Italy. Near Vercelli, that is my town, as I told you. So in 1123, we have the foundation of the Lucedio Abbey, that is this medieval abbey, that was founded by the French monks coming from Bourgogne, from France. And they introduced rice for medical use. So they didn't eat a lot of rice, but they use as a medicine. And this is the family of Lucedio. They still cultivate rice in this part of Italy, near this abbey. And this is a noble family. So this is Paolo Salvadori di Wiesenoff. There is a count that is hereditated this Principato di Lucedio and cultivating rice nowadays. Okay. So the rice was introduced in the Middle Age, but the real cultivation started from the 15th century. And until the 20th century, in Italy, the only rice known was a small round grain that was called nostrale. So just one kind of rice until the 20th century. Nowadays, this is the situation. We have different kind of rice. As I told you before, 250 kinds of rice created, developed in Italy, about 17 varieties cultivated, and they are classified into 4 groups, divided for shape and size of the grain. So we have rices with a round, small grain. They are mainly used for soup, desserts, and sushi. Rice with a medium grain that is a little bit bigger than the round one. And then we have the long rices divided in long A grain, that is long and oval, and is a typical rice for risotto. And long B grain that is called also indica because it's similar to the rices coming from India, and they are used mainly for salads and side dish. Now we are going to see them in details during the presentation. Another thing to distinguish a different kind of rices is the processing of the rice. So this is the aspect of the rice in the field before the harvest in autumn. Then we crop the rice, and this is the aspect of the paddy. So when we harvest the rice, it's not edible. So we cannot eat this kind of rice, but we need to process it. There are two steps of processing the rice. The first is called husking, because we remove the husk and we get the whole brown rice. It's a rice, we don't eat so much brown rice because it takes a very long cooking time, about 50 minutes. But if you look at the nutritional values, it's better than the white rice because it has fibers, lipids, and also minerals. Then we used to get the polishing. That is a second step of processing rice to get the white rice. And in Italy, we use a lot of white rice, especially for soups, for sushi, for risotto. It's the most consumed. Okay, so before we choose the rice, we decide the level of processing the rice. These are two kinds of whole rices. One is black rice, and this is the red rice. So they are both whole rices, but the difference is that they have anthocyanins that give the color, the natural color, black or red, depending on the concentration of these anthocyanins. There are also antioxidants. And that's why red rice and black rice are considered smart food. These are two whole rices, and we don't have to make a confusion with wild rice that is different from black rice. Wild rice is very similar, but it has a longer grain. It is not rice, it is another kind of cereal that is called Zizania aquatica. It's not cultivated in Italy, but we import it, the wild rice, from Canada. Then we have red rice that is different from red yeast rice. You probably heard about red yeast rice because it's used to produce anti-cholesterol medicine all over the world. They are two different products because the red rice is cultivated to be eaten, while the red yeast rice is obtained through the fermentation of a normal white rice with the koji to get this mold that will produce an anti-cholesterol medicine. Okay. So we go back to our classification that we use in Italy and in Europe is the same. And I go inside to tell you something about, in particular, of the round grain, and this round grain that we mainly use historically for the soups. Why we use this rice for the soups? Because it has a small grain. So it cooks in a short time, about 10 minutes. It has a low amylose, so it is quite sticky and not so firm. And so it is ideal for soups, for desserts, to prepare flowers. And so we don't need a great cooking furnace, but we need a quite sticky grain for this kind of preparation, for this kind of recipes that are soup, desserts, and flowers. In Italy, we also use the round rice for the sushi. It's very fashionable sushi in Italy. we have a lot of Japanese restaurants. You have to think that this rice, the sushi rice, is the second most cultivated rice in Italy. The first one is arborio, and the second one is selenio. This is a rice for sushi that we use in Italy for the sushi restaurant, and we import it all over Europe, always for the sushi restaurants. It is a round grain with low amylose, so it has a natural stickiness that is important in the sushi preparation. A low content of proteins because we need a more sweeter flavor of the rice, and we produce we cultivate this kind of rices, but we also produce the varieties. For example, the only one of these rices, Japanese, is Yume. Yume was imported from Japan in Italy, and it's cultivated to prepare sushi. Yume in Japanese means dream. Then we have Mirai, that is an Italian rice, and it means in Japanese destiny, future. And then we have Fortunato, that means lucky. So all particular names for the round rice for sushi. So as I told you before, the round rice is the most historical rice in Italy because it is the first rice introduced through Arabs and then cultivated in Italy from the Middle Age. We have extensive cultivation in northern Italy just from the 15th century, but we always have round rices. They were cultivated mainly in Piedmont and in Normandy, thanks to the construction of irrigation infrastructures that we still have today. And as I told you before, the only rice cultivated until the end of the 19th century was one, round, small, and it was called nostrale. So I show you that in Italy we also have long rices. So how did we create bigger rices starting from only one round varieties? And this is the surprise. We have two reasons. One is the hybridization, because in 1925 in Italy, in Vercelli, in the rice growing experimental station, we discovered the possibility of the rice breeding, the possibility to cross two different varieties of rice to generate, to create a new rice, a new variety. You can see in this picture, the system. We don't use GMO because they are forbidden in Italy and in Europe, but we use these hybridization techniques. We use two different panicles of rices. We cut the rice, the grain on the plant, and then we use the pollen. We drop the pollen of one kind of rice on another kind of rice to get a new plant, a new variety. Okay. And the second reason for which we introduced in Italy a rice with bigger grain that is very appreciated all over the world for the risotto is thanks to the USA, because in 1955, when the hybridization was discovered, there was a rice that it was called the lazy rice that was selected, created in Louisiana by this man that was called Salomon Lask Wright. Wright was his surname, so he called this rice lazy rice. That discovered this rice with a bigger grain, and from California was imported in Italy in 1925. Starting from lazy rice, this American rice, we started to cross lazy rice with other round rices that we have in Italy. For example, arborio, this is one of the most known Italian rice, was creating crossing lazy rice with vialone that was around Italian rice. And it was created in 1945. So I always say that the mother of Italian rice for risotto is America, because she was born in Louisiana, and she arrived in Italy through California. So starting from lady rice, we started to create a medium and long grain. In the USA, differently from Italy, you have only 3 different classes of rice: round, medium, and long. For long, you consider the grain, the slender and thin one, because when you talk about medium grain, you usually talk about medium and long grain. So in the USA, you don't have this distinction. This is a typical thing of Italian culture, because we really appreciate in our kitchen this kind of rices for risotto. So we added a distinction between long A and long B grain. The medium grain in Italy is usually used for soups, like the round grain. But in Spain, there is a typical dish that is called paella, that is appreciated also in Italy. That is a sort of risotto prepared with rice, vegetables, meat, and sometimes fish. And they cultivate in Spain 2 kinds of rices with a small grain that are called bomba and gleva. We don't cultivate bomba and gleva in Italy, but we have a similar rice that is called vialone nano, that is used also for risotto. And it is a special kind of rice for risotto because it has a medium small grain, but it has a high quantity of amylose, so the grain is consistent, and we appreciate it also for paella and risotto. Okay. Then talking about long rice, I can show you the long A types and the long B types. Starting from the long B grain, the slender and thin one that is mainly used for salads and for side dish. This is not a typical Italian rice, even if it is the most consumed rice in the world, also because Asia is the main producer of the rice in the world, and it is a typical Asiatic kind of rice, not Italian. We cultivate this kind of rices, especially to export them in the north of Europe. They are very similar to Basmati, as you probably know, coming from India and Pakistan. Very similar to jasmine, coming from Thailand. In Italy, we don't cultivate Basmati and jasmine because we have a very different climate from Asia, but we have a very similar kind of rices with a long V grain. We don't eat them so much, but we cultivate them for the export in north of Europe. In north of Europe, but also, for example, in France, they don't eat rices for risotto with oval grain. They prefer this kind of rices because they learned to eat rices from their colonies in the colonialist period. You have to think, for example, at Great Britain. Great Britain started to eat rice, importing it from India, from Pakistan. And the same for other countries. So they, in Northern Europe, they eat white rice, boiled rice, maybe with meat, with vegetables, with fish, like a side dish. So we select and cultivate this kind of rices mainly for the export. Some of these rices are also aromatic. They have a nut-like aroma. In Italy, we say that this aroma is similar to popcorn. And then we come to the very typical Italian rice for risotto. There is the long A type with the long, big, and oval grain. We really appreciate this kind of rice for risotto for the firmness, because we said that we like riso al dente. Al dente means really firm, not crunchy, but almost. Another characteristic of the rice of risotto is this, the pearl. All the world usually eats this kind of crystalline grain with a very lucid aspect, crystalline aspects. In Italy, we appreciate a grain that has an opalescent part inside the grain, because this part better absorbs condiments, taste, and liquid while you are cooking, absorbing the cooking while you're cooking the risotto. And this opalescent part inside the grain is called the pearl. So I told you that we appreciate the long A grain, big, oval, with the pearl, with a firm grain. And the main traditional rices that we use for risotto are these: Arborio, Carnaroli, Roma, Ballo, Sant'Andrea, and they are rices, long A rices. The only medium rice is Vialone Nano, that has a smaller grain but a high quantity of aminos. So it is quite firm, and you can get a risotto al dente. Some information about these traditional rices for risotto. Arborio is probably the most appreciated, and we will use today to prepare the risotto. It was born in Italy in 1945, and it was created near Milano. The father of Carnaroli is Ettore De Vecchi. Ettore De Vecchi selected this rice near Milano, in Paolo, and his helper, the breeder who worked with Mr. De Vecchi to create this rice, was called Carnaroli. His name was Carnaroli, and so Ettore De Vecchi was thankful to Mr. Carnaroli that helped him to create this variety, and he gave to this rice the name Carnaroli, of the name of his assistant. It cooks in 16-18 minutes and is very firm. It's the perfect rice for risotto al dente. Another historical rice for risotto, probably the most known all over the world, is Arborio, created thanks to Lady Wright, the American rice Lady Wright, and it was selected in 1946 by Domenico Marchetti. Domenico Marchetti was born in Arborio, that is a country near Vercelli, in the northwest of Italy, and so he gave to this rice the name of his country. Arborio has the biggest grain for the risotto, among the risotto rices, but it doesn't have high aminos. It is a low aminos rices, so it cooks in 16 minutes. Then we have Roma and Baldo. There are two identical grains for risotto. The only difference is that Rome has the pearl inside, while Baldo is crystalline. And Baldo is the only crystalline rice for risotto. And the last one is Sant'Andrea, is the less known rice for risotto even in Italy, because it is mainly cultivated in the Baraggia territory. That is a territory near in the northwest of Italy, from between Turin and Vercelli, we can say, and it is cultivated under the Alps, under the mountains, where the climate is really cold or colder than any other part of Italy. So the characteristic of this rice is that it doesn't suffer the cold weather of Piedmont under the mountains. It's very good for creamy risotto. It was also selected by What is Door, that is an international culinary contest, and it cooks in 14 minutes because the grain is smaller than the other rices for risotto. Now, I told you something about risotto rices. I'm gonna tell you something about the recipe and the story of risotto. There is not a date of birth of risotto. We can say that the very traditional dish prepared with rice in Italy is the soup. From the Middle Age, the people ate mainly soups, so cooking rice in broth, mainly with vegetables, for two reasons. The first is that until the 20th century, we just had one round small grain, so it was not so firm. And the other reason is that we didn't have professional millers, but we had craft millers. So the grains of rice during the processing were often broken, and we used rice like other cereals to prepare soups. We started to introduce some methods, some elements of the risotto preparations, starting from the 16th century, thanks to the Spanish domination in Lombardy, in the north of Italy, because they introduced the paella recipe. That is a dry preparation. So you use broth to cook paella, but then you don't leave a lot of broth in the dish, but you prepare a dry kind of rice. And another method important to create risotto was the pilaf method that was introduced probably from the 17th century through the Republic of Venice that traded with the Arabs. The pilaf method is very similar to the risotto method because you use butter and salted onion to toast the rice. Then you pour the broth, and then you make a dry rice preparation, a dry recipe. The first complete recipe of the risotto is of Antonio Nebbia in the book Cuoco Maceratese, because in 1779 he introduced the toasting method of the rice with butter and onion, like the pilaf method, but also introduced the mantecatura that we are going to see later, is using at the end of the preparation cheese and butter to create a dry but creamy risotto. The first author who used the word risotto was Pellegrino Artusi. There was a very important author. He was a gastronomer, and he wrote in 1891 this book that was called La scienza in cucina e l'arte di mangiar bene, the kitchen science and the art of well eating. And he introduced in his book more than 10 recipes, and 3 recipes were about saffron risotto. 3 different kinds of rices. The first, very simple, using saffron. The second with marrow added, and the third with the Marsala wine. That is a typical white wine coming from Sicily, and it is a sweet wine. We usually use a dried wine. So the difference in this third recipe is that we use a sweet risotto wine. We also call in Italy, usually we used to say that the saffron risotto is also called the risotto alla milanese, as Pellegrino Artusi said. This fact is probably connected to a story coming from Milano, coming from a document that is kept in an Ambrosian library, a document of from 1574, and it is the story of Mr. Valerio di Fiandra. Master Valerio of Fiandra was the master that was involved, engaged in the realization of the windows for the Cathedral of Milano, il Duomo. And Valerio di Fiandra usually used saffron to create the yellow color and to give to the glasses a brighter effect. So one of his workers took a joke of him, and during the wedding of his daughter, he asked the chef a variation on the rice preparation, and he added a pinch of saffron to the dish, to the rice that was usually seasoned with simple butter, so that was white. And from this joke, the legend and this document tells that there was the birth of risotto allo zafferano, and that was also called risotto alla milanese. Risotto alla milanese has different kinds of recipes. Many chefs reviewed the recipe from Pellegrino Artusi to Gualtiero Marchesi. Gualtiero Marchesi is one of the most important chefs in Italy. He collected during his life 3 Michelin stars. And in 1981, he created this particular and elegant risotto, introducing on the risotto a golden leaf. So this is one of the most famous saffron risotto in Italy. There was also another difference. He didn't use sauteed onions to prepare the saffron risotto, but introduced the onion taste using an acid butter. So cooking separately onion, butter, white wine, vinegar, and then filtering this acid butter and introducing it just at the end of the preparation during the mantecatura step together with the cheese. And is one of the most famous Italian risotto allo zafferano. Today we are going to prepare a saffron risotto, a classic one from Pellegrino Artusi recipe. And before I go to my kitchen, I want to show you the 4 steps that we need to create the classic recipe of risotto. So the first step is toast the rice. We pour in the pot olive oil or butter. We heat the pot, and then we pour the rice. The toasting step is very important because with this method we can get a more consistent grain, and we need to keep on the heat for a couple of minutes to get more firmness to our risotto. It's also important to use olive oil or butter because the fat covers the grain, and it's like a kind of cover to protect the grain when we cook with the warm water the rice. It is a very important step to get a risotto al dente. The second step is pouring the wine. We usually use white wine, and in this way we leave the fats of butter or the olive oil. Okay, white wine is also important for the acid taste, that is a component of risotto. The third step is cooking risotto with a hot broth. Depending on the recipe, we can use vegetable broth or meat stock or even water. The important thing is to pour a hot liquid and then to add it ladle by ladle. So not pouring all the liquid in the same time, by little, and mixing the risotto with a spoon constantly while we are cooking the rice. This method, this step is useful also because melting the risotto with a spoon helps the starch to be released. So we can melt to release the starch while we are cooking risotto, and to get a final creamy preparation, a creamy risotto. And then another important thing, that is the final step, is called the mantecatura. It is the fundamental step to get a creamy risotto. We have to turn off the stove before. We wait a couple of minutes. We cover the pot with a towel, and then we add butter and Parmesan cheese, and we melt with a spoon to create a good and creamy risotto. So the grain has to be firm, has to be consistent under the teeth, but the risotto, the dish, has to be also creamy. Okay, so in Italy we say mantecato. And these are the ingredients. This is the final result of risotto allo zafferano. We are going to use carnaroli rice, then onion, butter, the saffron, the beef stock, white wine, Parmigiano Reggiano, and salt. So these are the main ingredients of risotto allo zafferano. And now I can give you back the word to Scott or Viola. And maybe before I go to my kitchen, I don't know if you have some questions about the presentation. You can ask me something also during risotto cooking, because I will use carnaroli and it takes 15 minutes to be cooked. So I think that about risotto we can have enough time for the questions.
Sure, I'm happy to, if you'd like. Somebody asked if black rice is available in the USA, and I think I answered that question actually in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so I talked about I talked about Artemide and Venere, Valentina.
Yes,
those are the two kinds. Yeah, the two kinds that we find in the States are Artemide and Venere. Venere is very easy to find. Just do an online research. Artemide, which is my favorite, is available on Jazzy.com, which is Giada De Laurentiis' new e-commerce website. Also, the next question was, what makes wild rice wild? Then you mentioned it is a different kind of cereal from a wild grass. And what is the name of the grass again?
Zinzania. I can write if you want. Zinzania aquatica. Probably you have a different name in USA and Canada, but in Italy we call Zinzania aquatica.
Funny thing is that in Italy, zizzania also means a bad feeling. If you say to someone that you are putting in some zizzania, it means you are making things strife, right? So zizzania means
because it's a weedy plant, un'infestante. So it is probably not cultivated. La raccolgono proprio vicino ai fiumi.
Yeah, they're not. It's not cultivated. It's she said it's they gather it right next to on riverbanks, and it's very infesting. Like it just keeps growing. It's a weed, so that's why when you say to put zizzania, it means you just put a lot of strife in between a situation.
And zizzania is not aromatic.
It's not aromatic.
Black rice is aromatic, and zizzania is not aromatic.
And is it technically a cereal?
Sorry?
Or is it technically a cereal as well? È un cereale anche la zizzania?
Sì,
yes.
la graminacea. Sì,
yes.
Yes.
It's a graminaceous, I think you say. It's a type of cereal.
Also rice.
Someone is asking if do you always have to use beef stock? Can you use vegetable stock for risotto?
No, depending on the recipe. The classical recipe of risotto allo zafferano is with stock. But for example, I usually prepare tomato rice with vegetable broth, some risotto alla parmigiana, that is white risotto. I usually use water, and then because I like the flavor of rice, butter, and cheese. So for risotto alla parmigiana, I use water. It depends on the preparation of the recipe of risotto. Sometimes I use red wine if the recipe requires. For example, risotto al Barolo, using the Barolo wine is a recipe. So it depends on what you want to prepare.
But for risotto alla milanese, the classic is beef stock.
The classic is beef stock, yes.
But if you wanted to make a vegetarian version, you could use a vegetable stock.
Yes,
it's not going to be as flavorful. Yeah, it's going to be lighter.
Yeah.
And another question is, Renee says, thank you, a wonderful presentation. She's wondering about the arsenic situation with rice in Italy, la situazione dell'arsenico.
It depends. So I'm not I'm agronomo, come si dice, agronomist. So I'm not expert in rice cultivation, but it depends. I know mainly on the kind, on the type of terroir. So if you find a land, some rice fields where the arsenic is contained, it probably goes inside the grain. But we have analysis, so all the rice is analyzed, and so the situation is under control. I mean, it depends on the part of Italy in which you cultivate, and there are differences between a rice field from another rice field.
I have a question, which is, I think you mentioned that, you know, the Italians we are definitely known for risotto around the world, but I think you mentioned to me that despite that, risotto is really not the bulk of cultivation of rice in Italy. What is the percentage of rice for risotto that is cultivated in Italy versus all the rice?
Yeah, about 25%.
25%.
As around the grain, I mean, we cultivate, it can be different from 1 year to another, but mainly we have 25% of risotto, of rice risotto, 25% of round grains. The last year we had 13% of round grain because of the sushi. 25% of long B grain for the export, and the other 55% is long A grain, not specific for risotto, but used, for example, for the parboiled type. The parboiled rice is a pre-cooked kind of rice that we use in the catering, in the restaurants, in the hospitals, because it doesn't overcook. And we also export parboiled rice. So I mean, the cake is divided into 4 groups, I could say, depending, changing from year to year.
So one more question, a few more questions. One is about the black rice again. Somebody asked to spell the two kinds of black rice cultivated in Italy, Venere and Artemide.
Venere and Artemide, and we also have, I can write Nerone and Ebano, the most known.
I should say that the Venere and Artemide are the ones that are available in the States, but there are others that are cultivated in Italy. Nerone and Ebano. Are there any other ones, Valentina?
Penelope. They are less famous than Venere. So I don't think that you will find, but also in Italy, we have some difficulties in finding Nerone or Penelope, for example. You could find easily Venere, also because we sell it in the supermarkets, and Artemide because we have a producer. She's a woman, Cristina Cavalchini. She has good contacts in the USA, but also in Dubai, in other countries, and so she promotes this license called Artemide, and you could find it in the United States.
So the other questions are: you toasted the rice. Can this step be skipped? Does it take longer to cook? Is it for flavor? What does the toasting do?
For the consistency of the grain, because while we process the rice, the millers processing the rices, the grain could be broken sometimes, or even have some microfractures. So when you cook with the broth or with the water, the broth easily penetrates the grain. If you toast the grain, and if you toast it with a fat like butter or an olive, you cover the rice, you protect the grain. So the water, the liquid penetrates the rice, but slowly, more slowly.
Okay, so then
I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, if not clear, please let me know. Valentina mentioned to me that sometimes she's not 100% comfortable with English. So if there's something that you don't understand, let me know and I will try to translate it.
Thank you.
So black rice, Italian food. Oh, okay. Let me carry, for those of us who prefer brick and mortar. If you're in Chicago, I'm not sure, but I think you have a pretty big Italian section. Many Italian delis sell it, sometimes better supermarkets. If you have Whole Foods, I used to be able to find it at Whole Foods. And Italy would have it also. In Chicago, you have an Italy, so they would have it. Another question, Valentina, is how nutrition is parboiled rice?
It's between the whole rice and the white rice, because as I told you before, we have many nutritional values in the whole rice, because we have fibers, lipids, minerals. When we polish the rice to get the white rice, we eliminate all the parts around the grain and all the nutritional fats, because the white rice is mainly composed of white starch. The parboiled rice is between the whole rice and the white rice, because we pre-cook the parboiled rice with the husk. So we pre-cook the peldi, okay, the rice before the processing, and some nutritional values migrate inside the grain. And so we can say that it has more nutritional values than the white rice, even if less than the whole rice.
Okay, let me see if there are other questions. There is actually a question that was asked very early in the chat. I'm wondering if the rice originally introduced via the Arabian Peninsula was Oryza sativa or Oryza glaberrima.
Oryza sativa, because Oryza glaberrima is a botanical distinction from Oryza sativa, and glaberrima is cultivated mainly in Africa.
And then the other...
It could even not be cultivated in Italy because the climate is not good for glaberrima.
Also, you mentioned that the risotto, the carnaroli, and the risotto rices as we know them today, so carnaroli and arborio, were really bred and created after World War II, so in the mid-40s. How would you say that changed the way the risotto was made? Because the risotto was already made, and since like the late 1500 with the cuoco maceratese, we got the mantecatura. But then what happens as to what a risotto would have been in the 1600 versus the way that it is today?
I think depending on the taste of Italian people at the time, because we introduced new rices, they tasted new rices, and they discovered that they preferred them. I mean, nowadays, rices like arborio and carnaroli are considered historicals, but at the time they were new, so they were new foods. And so when they started to use bigger grains, they liked these rices, and so they started to use them for risotto, for dry preparation, because they understood that they were better.
Do you think that it's because I generally use I like Vialone Nano, but for risotto. But do you think if I use a riso originario, for example, another type of rice for risotto, what I find is that the texture is different, that it's less creamy, that maybe doesn't hold the cooking as well. Why is that? What is it?
It's probably more creamy, originario, because it's even quite sticky, okay? So because it releases a lot of starch. But for risotto, we like the firmness, the consistency of the grain. So we are trying to balance from creamy and hard grain in this preparation. Is a typical characteristics of risotto, having a creamy risotto, but when we put the grain under the teeth, we wanna feel the crunch, the consistency of the grain.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Excuse me, Viola, let me just interject. This is Scott speaking. I find that risotto, when it's prepared properly, is one of God's greatest creations. But in most restaurants, I have not had good luck ordering risotto in restaurants. I've had classes in how to make risotto, and it comes out fine when I follow the instructions. I wonder if it's just my experience, but it seems to me most restaurants don't do a very good job of risotto. What's the big mistake that restaurants make, or what's the big thing not to do when making risotto?
Probably to pre-cook it.
Don't pre-cook it is what you're saying. You make it fresh, or don't do it at all.
Yes,
and otherwise it's a gloppy mess. It's lead. Like
it's a problem also in Italy. So when we go to the restaurant, sometimes we find risotto minimum 2 people because it's a quite long preparation, because it takes about 20 minutes. So someone is very smart and is able to pre-cook the rice in the correct way. So we start to cook the rice, and then it puts it like in the freezer, l'abbattitore. It's like a kind of professional freezer to stop the cooking time. Okay, in some restaurants they do this, but in other restaurants they prepare risotto with a pre-cooked rice. So that's not good. Pre-cooked rice or parboiled rice. That's the wrong way to prepare risotto. Use a pre-cooked or a parboiled rice. It's very important to use the correct rice. And if you are in a restaurant, the best rice you can use is carnaroli, because it has a big grain and it is also a high amylose rice. So you can have a good result in having a risotto al dente.
I wanted to say that the abbattitore that she talked about is a temperature abater. It's not really a blast freezer, meaning that a temperature abater can go either way, can freeze or not freeze. But what it does is that it chills very, very quickly, and it's become a very important tool for chefs today. And I've worked in Italian restaurants and in the States, and she's right, because it takes so long. People, most restaurant will cook it, will bring it to about 6 minutes of cooking so that they can shorten the time. And it works if it is chilled well. Before abater existed, temperature abaters existed, what we used to do is we would put it on a sheet pan and kind of just spread it all around and then put it on top of ice, so that it would chill very, very quickly. Scott, in terms of getting good risotto, what you're looking for is a restaurant that tells you that it takes 20 minutes, because it means that they're making it top to bottom at the time that they need to make it. So if they say, yes, we have risotto, but you have to wait 20 minutes, then that's probably a good bet. Do you agree, Valentina?
Yes, you can order a starter before.
Yeah.
So if there are no other questions, I can go to my kitchen to prepare the risotto.
While Valentina is getting ready, I'm going to give her a plug for the work that she does. Not only is it incredible, but she also offers cooking classes for rice cooking classes of different kinds. I think I posted a link to them on the chat. Not just for private classes, but she also does a lot of like team building and works with companies, does a lot of training for importers of Italian rice. So if anyone ever asks, she's available, and you can tell her English is quite good, and she's also delightful. So there's that. So keep her in mind if anyone asks. So if you're interested,
we can start when you want. I have an induction stove, and I start with a little bit of olive oil in the pot, because we have to toast the rice, as I told you before. So now I show you how to do. And I will use a carnaroli rice. This is the one with the big and oval grain, and it is quite consistent. And we pour the rice together with the oil. And then we have to wait for a couple of minutes, because we need to cover the grain with the olive oil, and then we need the heat. I think that the advantage of this induction stove is that it's very fast, faster than the fire. And I want to show you, maybe I can you see the rice? During the toasting step, I usually put the salt. And then if you want, you can use it also later if you think that you need a risotto more tasty. Now it's probably just 1 minute, but with the induction stove is already okay. This is a white wine, dry white wine, is a Pinot. Just to show you. Okay. We have to wait a minute because we want the dry rice. The broth is boiling, it's stock. All the alcohol parts have to evaporate before you introduce the stock. Okay, now it's okay. The stock is boiling, so we take a ladle and we introduce just a ladle. 2 or 3 ladles to cover all the grains. Okay, and then we melt. We melt the rice. And we can hold the fire down. From now, I count 16 minutes for cannaroli. If you use an arborio, 14 to 15 minutes. If you use a Vialone Nano, from 12 to 14 minutes, depending on your taste also. And sometimes you stir. When you stir the rice, you can make a circle and then put inside like an egg. In this way, we help the starch to be released, and we incorporate the air, and at the end, we will have a creamier risotto. I already prepared the saffron. This is a saffron in pistils. Can you see? I hope you can see well.
We can see you easily.
Okay. Yesterday, in the afternoon, 24 hours ago, I put some water in the saffron, and it helps to release the color, but also the aroma. So if you can smell it, is very, very intense. And the colors is almost released completely from the skins to the water. And if you use dry skins, you don't have the same effect of the yellow color. So if you use the powder of saffron, you probably have more color. Also because sometimes there is a little percentage of curcuma in the powder of saffron. And if you use the steam, the dry steam, and you put it directly in the risotto, it's not the ideal situation because they don't have the time to release well the color, and also because they don't even have the time to release the aroma. And if you cook for too much time the saffron, the aroma is not so intense. So we better introduce the saffron near the end of the risotto preparation. tell me if everything is clear. Or if you have other questions. Okay. Do you cook risotto? Usually, you prepare risotto. It is the typical Italian recipe of the Sunday lunch, we usually say. Many people have more time to dedicate to the lunch. Viola, è un piatto che preparano a casa?
Valentina wants to know if you make risotto at home. Does anyone make risotto at home? And if not, will you be making it now that Valentina is showing you how?
I think I'll make it for lunch today.
Good.
I'll show you then the cheese I will use for mantecatura, and it's Parmigiano Reggiano. You better choose 36 or 40 months aged Parmigiano, because if you use a fresh cheese when we do mantecatura, it's too much sticky. Okay, we need a creamy risotto but not a sticky cheese. Okay, so you better use an aged Parmigiano. In Italy we have Grana Padano and Parmigiano Reggiano. They are the two cheese typical for risotto. And I have grated Parmigiano. And I have the butter. I put the butter in the freezer. So you better keep the butter in the fridge, or even better in the freezer, until the end of the preparation.
So why do you freeze the butter again?
I freeze the butter because with the cold butter, I have a more creamy final result. So when I do mantecatura, it's important to add butter before that is very cold. It will be more creamy when I melt it, when I mix, when I stir the butter inside. And then when the temperature slows down, I add grated cheese. So if I freeze the butter, the temperature slows down even faster. You see that the starch is coming out. So I think it's quite relaxing to prepare risotto.
Do you have the stove on high or medium high? What's the temperature for your stove at the moment?
It's medium. It's a 7 in the induction stove. So never use the low fire because we need the boiling movements. It has to be medium, not too much high because we don't want to burn risotto, but medium high is the correct one. So from 1 to 9, I put 7 usually. You see the broth boiling probably.
Absolutely. We see it.
Yes, we need this movement. So the risotto don't want to stay still. You have to help the rice to release its soul. If you don't use olive oil, you can also use butter when you toast the rice. So you could use butter both to toast the rice and then to prepare mantecatura, or you could use olive oil both to toast the rice and then for mantecatura. The important thing is to have a quite cold olive oil. So we need the cold temperature in the final step of the risotto preparation. Better use cold ingredients. That's also why we turn off the stove. So we make mantecatura out of the fire. There are also some kinds of vegan risotto that are created with, they are prepared with olive oil, toasted with olive oil, and then mantecatura with vegan butter, for example. Viola, non so come si dice anacardi in inglese, but they are dry fruits.
Anacardi are cashews.
I say dry fruits because I didn't understand the name, please.
Hold on, let me type it. Cashews. Let's see.
Cashews butter, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of butter for mantecatura. Or another kind of vegan risotto, for example, is the pumpkin risotto because you use the pumpkin cream at the end. So this is a classic recipe, but I mean, you can use your fantasy and follow your taste to prepare different kinds of risotto. Someone puts the olive oil inside the freezer in mantecatura, for vegan mantecatura. There is a translation of mantecatura, I don't think.
No, we don't translate mantecatura.
You don't translate mantecatura. It's like, or even sometimes I say al dente. It's clear for you what al dente means.
Yes.
Okay. So like pasta, also the rice has to be quite firm. So we still have 4 minutes. And I'm going to introduce the saffron in 1 minute.
Valentina, are you using olive oil or butter?
I'm using olive oil for the toasting step, and then I will use the butter.
Can you toast with butter too? Why would you prefer olive oil instead of butter? You can do either.
Yes, you can do either. It depends on your taste. I prefer the taste of olive oil because it's a little bit more acid.
More what? Acid?
Acid, yeah.
Yeah. And tell us again why you want the butter or the olive oil for the mantecatura to be cold.
For the mantecatura, it has to be cold because the risotto becomes more creamy.
Okay.
Because it's like a thermic shock. So you need at first to turn off the stove, then you wait a couple of minutes, and then you add the butter. And you have to help the temperature to slow down. So you can see that the risotto is very, very yellow. If you try to put directly the saffron, you don't have the same result. You have a very pale risotto. So the best thing is to schedule your risotto Zafferano, and you put some water in the saffron the day before, at least, but very at least 2 hours before.
You mean the saffron should be diluted 2 hours before? Okay.
Yeah, at least. Better the day before.
You just leave it in water?
Yes, a little bit of water.
Do you toast it first?
No.
No.
È termolabile lo zafferano. If you cook it too much, you lose the aroma. Okay, I'm gonna take the towel. So this is the risotto aspect. Not completely dry, as you can see. Then we cover for a couple of minutes with a clean towel. Don't use the lid, because if you use the lid of the pot, you create some water and it drops down on the risotto. So it has to be transpirating. I take the butter. I put it in the freezer before.
Valentina, there's a question of whether it matters what kind of pot you're using. Is it the shape of the pot?
The shape and the highness of the pot matters, because the risotto shouldn't be prepared with a pan because it's too much low, and you need a quite large pot, but also ice. This is the typical pot for risotto.
So somewhere between a sauté pan and a stock pot, somewhere in between. So a pot, but not too high, but not too low.
Yeah, exactly.
And Valentina, this is Scott. We were talking about restaurants, how they misprepare risotto and it comes out so heavy and thick and not creamy. What do you do in your home when you make it the proper way like you do and you serve it to everybody and you have leftover? it's just not, no matter what you do, it's not going to be the same if you serve it the next day. Is that right?
No, you have to do a different recipe that we call risotto al salto. So if some risotto remains, so I usually do the correct portion because it's 80-100 grams for people, per person. But if there is some risotto remained, I put in a pan some butter, then I add the risotto, and then I prepare like a kind of tart. And you can cut some slice of this risotto tart. I don't know if it's clear.
The
It's
only,
called risotto al salto.
how do you serve it?
Yeah.
Tart?
So it's essentially what you do is it's called riso al salto. I put it on, or risotto al salto. I put it on the chat, which means something that you saute, that jumps in the pan. So you take a pan, right? And it's better to use a non-stick pan if you have it.
Yes,
and then you put,
like this, for example. So you put some butter here,
yeah,
and then the pan has to be really hot, and then you put the risotto inside. You push, okay? It's like a kind of pizza of risotto, and then you cook for a few minutes. It has to be a little bit crunchy, even. So at the end, you can put it in a dish, and you can cut slice.
Wonderful. What a wonderful tip. Thank you.
and you can use olive oil too, right? It doesn't have to be butter. You can use olive oil too.
We usually use butter, but yeah. Some fat. You always need some fat for risotto preparation. Yes.
You want to get that crunch. And the other thing you can do that my mom used to do, she would actually turn it over so that then she would slide it back in the pan so that she could get the crunch on both sides.
Okay. Yeah. You have to be able to do it.
Yes.
Not so easy, like frittata. So I put the cold, very cold butter. And then you have to turn your risotto until all the butter is melted. So you don't need to hurry up when you prepare risotto. You have to take your time. And this is the grating Parmigiano, not Parmesan. And the mantecatura of the risotto is also called all'onda. So the wavy is like a wave. Not liquid, but also not too much dry.
Somebody asked, does it matter what kind of cooking pot to use for the risotto? I think you kind of answered that, but just in case.
16 minutes.
Yes, we answer.
Yeah.
I think Valentina answered the pot question.
Sorry?
You answered the pot question. Hai risposto alla domanda su che tipo di pentola.
Sì, this is the pot, large and high. And the cooking time, when I say cooking time, I start after the toasting. So I toast, I add the wine, and then I start to count the cooking time. 15 minutes for carnaroli, and less for the others, mainly. It depends also on the quantity of rice. This is one portion. Maybe if you are preparing risotto for many people, you also need 18 times, so sometimes. It depends also on the processing level, because if you polish less the rice, you can also add some carnaroli rices that needs 20 minutes to be cooked. So this is the texture of the risotto. You can see it's quite creamy. So you see, if I put the whisk here, okay. I use a plant plate.
It smells wonderful.
For me, yes. For you, less. Then you try to distribute all the risotto on the plate, and that's the final result. You see that it's shiny, it's still creamy, but you can see the grain of the rice. You can still see the grain. So it's not like a soup. It's a risotto.
That's beautiful, Valentina. I wanted everyone to notice that the risotto is kind of like going around, you kind of spreading out in a pool. Very often what I see in the States is like these globs of risotto, you know, there's like a risotto hill, but really good risotto should just kind of spread evenly on the plate once you put it down. You just shake the plate and it comes down in an even pool. Do you see how it's kind of like a flat? And that's what you're looking for.
Yes. I'm sorry you can feel the crunch. Maybe when I will come in Chicago with Viola.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, I think we are I really am upset now because I can't eat it. I mean, this is very frustrating.
This is my dinner.
Oh, and you've shown us the proper way, and now we know. And I used to hear how wonderful risotto was, and I went to a special luncheon at one of Chicago's finest Italian restaurants. There must have been 100 of us there, and they served risotto. And I thought, what the hell is everybody talking about? This is awful. And then I've had it again in cooking classes, and it is wonderful. And I have made it properly. But now we've all seen, really, this is amazing what you've shown us, the proper way to enjoy, again, one of God's greatest gifts to cooking, risotto. So thank you so much. And Viola, you were like a special ingredient for us today. You're the Parmigiano Reggiano for our program today. Thank you so much. I can't wait for your program in October. And of course, we will be in touch. And thank you for this. What's the word? Delizioso? Is that the word? Delizioso? Is that Italian?
Yes, delicious, delizioso. Yes.
Okay. And if it's of course, delicious is an English word, and I figure if you say it like it's Italian, it'll be Italian. So I just made up delizioso, figuring it was right. But anyway, thank you so much. And again, we can all take Valentina's classes, you can even look up her name and find her website. We've given it to you, and make sure you click on the part that says English. She teaches her classes in English and Italian. So anyway,
there are a few questions, Scott.
oh, there are. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just because.
Wonderful.
Yeah, because somebody said, I didn't know it has to be liquidy creamy like that. And I have to say, I kind of was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, we very rarely get good
Right, but
risotto, and Valentina's unlocked the mystery of it for us, and do try this at home. Now we know how. Thank you. Anyway,
right, but
go on.
can we? This is the correct texture. Is this liquidy creamy? Because I was thinking it also
Creamy.
being a dryer.
No, it has to be creamy.
Okay,
So you should turn off the stove when it's not completely dry, with a little bit of broth inside. Then you cover for a couple of minutes, but with the heat, the rice still absorbs the liquid around. And then when you add cold butter or olive and then the cheese, the rice, the grain, still keeps on absorbing. So this rice is it's still creamy, but if you leave this risotto for 10 minutes, for example, you have to eat it quickly, because the grain keeps on absorbing the liquid. That's why you need to keep it with a little bit of liquid inside before you turn off the stove. And then in this way, it's creamy, not liquid. So it has not to be so dry, okay?
So was this kitchen specially designed for teaching?
No, absolutely not.
It looks like it. Well, I think we're done. And I think the two of you together, this program worked out really well.
Yes.
Because you both intuitively knew each other's efforts.
Two delicious professionals here.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, and again, thank you again, Valentina. And I am so hungry now. I've got to eat at least a peanut butter sandwich or something quick. So thank you again.
You can cook risotto. It's not so difficult as you thought.
Right. And again, thank you. And then when I have made risotto for company, and then I'd serve it, have it as leftovers the next day, it's again like that horrible restaurant lead. But now you've given us a wonderful tip on what to do with it. Just fry it or saute it and like a torta. Would that be the word?
Yeah.
And slice it. So what a wonderful tip. Thank you. And again, let's all try this at home. And ciao.
Ciao. Thank you very much. Thank you to you. Ciao, Viola, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valentina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.